The Town will look to bounce back from Monday night's mauling when they go to Fratton Park to take on the League One champions Portsmouth Saturday lunchtime. Alongside me to preview the game is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Jimbo, bounce back ability, and that's what it's all about.
The Ian Dowie factor. Proper football.
Absolutely, yes. We will preview what we hope will be the ultimate bounce back right after this intro.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, the longest running Luton Town podcast this year, sponsored by Solid, providing opportunities, provisions and assistance so our academy can fulfil their potential. You are listening or watching the Portsmouth preview episode, and as I said before the intro, alongside me to preview the game is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Jimbo, they might have been League One last season, but let's make no mistake, this is no easy assignment.
I think this is a really difficult one because that ground is a cauldron and they're going to be well up for this. They've not been in the Championship for so long. This is their big day. You remember when Luton got back in the Championship and what a night that was against Middlesbrough, the sunny Bradley scorcher and all of that. It was a great occasion and they'll want something of that magnitude. But, they've gone to Leeds. They've got a 3-3 draw. I don't quite know how.
Nor does Brendan Aronson, I don't think.
I haven't seen the result and how the game played out, but they did. And that sets them up perfectly for this game. And, in the lower leagues of the Football League, there was a little bit of a rivalry between these two clubs, weren't there? So they're going to be properly up for this. Yeah,
they are, yeah. Matches at Fratton Park don't tend to have gone too well for us. I remember it was our first game in League One, wasn't it? The visit prior to that was when Cameron McGeehan broke his leg down there and got booed off on the stretcher, which created that rivalry that you speak of. However, I think all Luton fans will have special memories of the last time these two teams met. Wonderful January night under the floodlights, snow, orange football, the works. Wonka, absolutely. That free kick, dummied by JJ, put in the bottom corner. Absolutely.
Bedlam.
Sensational game of football in a sensational season. And if we get even half as much on Saturday, we're going to be in for a cracking game of football.
Yeah, you are. I think that they're a really useful side. I highlighted them in our season preview because I thought it was right that they're the second team that Luton were going to play. I don't necessarily expect them to be up there challenging, but they are a big club in the Football League. They've not been in the Championship for a long time. They're probably still on a high, in a similar vein to when Luton last season got into the Premier League, although it was defeats then, but there was this feel-good factor about it, wasn't it? And they'll feel that this is a division where they at least belong. They probably feel that they might be a Premier League outfit for the size of them and the history of the club, recent history of the 21st century history of the club at least. And they're going to be properly up for it. So I think it's a really difficult challenge for Luton, regardless of what happened in the first game of the season. But considering that was so dire, then there's a lot on this, I think.
Yep, before the people who are sticklers for statistics come at me, no one cares about pre-season friendlies. That's why I said the last time we played them was in that wonderful night in League One. We did draw 1-1 a couple of seasons ago. Down there, though, it is not a happy hunting ground. No goal in our last 5 games. Lost the last 2 1-0. I mean, at the very least, you'd like to think we could score based on what we saw of them on Saturday. Well, let's talk about them in the front side of the pitch first, because if you think of the Burnley game on Monday night, direct midfield passes tore us open. They've got Marlon Pack, whose pass for their opening goal on Saturday was chef's kiss, really, wasn't it? Didn't even look where he was playing it, just reverse pass, no look, perfectly onto the foot of the opponent.
Yeah.
He is a technically good footballer, Marlon Pack. He's their captain. If we're going to get anything out of this game, we cannot not press him, because he will pick us apart with that passing range.
Yeah, I think so, and that's going to be. It was going to be a big problem anyway, or a big focus anyway after the Burnley game, because the midfield was so bypassed and so, under-resourced really against a rampant Burnley side. But from what I saw, against Leeds, you mentioned the pass, which was sublime stuff for their first goal. You can't give that guy any space, in the way that. Burnley had far too much. I mean, ultimately there was a massive chasm for Burnley's fourth goal, wasn't it? And that can't happen again for sure. But it's all about the press, really, because that didn't work against Burnley. And if you're going to stop him quarterbacking the situation, then you've got to get on top of him.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we have to get him under pressure. Not whether it's a press or whether it's just someone when he gets the ball busting a gut to close him down. If we let him pick passes, it's going to be a tough afternoon at the office. It'll also be a tough afternoon at the office if we let Callum Lang, not his cousin Clubber, Callum Lang free, because, we can see that he can hit a football from their second goal against Leeds, and he had the coolness in injury time as well, with the whole of Ellen Road on his back in a big game to just slot a penalty nowhere near the corner like the Sky commentator said it was, just straight down the middle. But the coolness to do that tells you that there's a footballer there it's worthy of championship level.
Yeah, I mean they romped the League One, really, isn't it? I mean, I think a 5-point lead of that league is worthy of saying romping it. And they've obviously got the resources to get up into that division, but they scored a fairly decent amount of goals, not the highest amount in that top chasing pack, the top six. I think Peterborough and Bolton got more goals, but 78 is nothing to sniff at, and I think it was just 48 on the other side of it. So they've got goals in them, but they have also, as we saw against Leeds, got plenty of spaces you could probably exploit.
I mean, that's where the encouragement comes from, isn't it? I mean, their best player, Portsmouth, for 25 minutes was the crossbar, because Leeds could not stop hitting the thing. I think it was 3 times in the first 15 minutes, a couple of other sitters that were missed as well. Down our right-hand side, their left-hand side, Connor Ogilvie looks an accident waiting to happen. He didn't pull. He mistimed a tackle, flew in on Dan James for the penalty that opened the scoring for Leeds, then got booked fouling Dan James again, and we've kind of got like for like with Dan James and Chio down that right-hand side. So you kind of think, get the ball out to Chio, get going at him. And he played again on Tuesday night. So I'm assuming and they made a lot of changes for the Carabao Cup defeat against Millwall, which we're not really going to focus too much on, because them first round of cup things, if you get through, happy days. If you don't, no one really cares. But the fact that he played in both games would suggest that maybe they're a little bit short of left-back options. Therefore, we can expect Ogilvie to be up against Ogbenny. That would be a commentator's fun and games, wouldn't it? And if Chio can win that battle, that's a long way to getting us where we want to be in the game.
Yeah, and I think Chio is one of the players that's probably got a fair bit to prove after the first game. He didn't really have a lot of joy in the attacking sense, and in the defensive sense, probably culpable for not pressing very determinedly in at least one of the goals anyway. So I'd love to see Chio in full flight. Really, I'm not sure we've seen it for a while, and maybe this is an opportunity to do that, because certainly there seemed a lot of joy for Leeds down that flank against Ogilvie. So it'd be an interesting one, that. And I mean, defenders don't like pace anyway, and I just feel like there hasn't been, from Chio, there hasn't really been that desire to use it so much, and that can happen with hamstring injuries that he did have, which is serious. But I think once he gets that and just starts being as direct as he was when he first started playing for Luton, and the reason they bought him from Rotherham as well, I think that could be a real plus point there.
Yeah, the weird thing is he probably doesn't need to do it too often on Saturday. If he can just ping it past him and go past him once, then he's going to drop off 20 yards, isn't he? And then he's got him where he wants him. He can go inside, he can go outside. He doesn't necessarily need to have the pace to do it. So it's an important thing that we get him in the game. But there was also a lot of space between their defence and their midfield, wasn't there? The third goal for Leeds at the weekend came from a intricate little pass right through the heart of the defence. The second goal, shortly before that, there was a huge chance that was missed, that was blazed over the crossbar when a cross came between the defence and the midfield. This Portsmouth side, they look like they leave space in areas that this Luton team like to exploit. In that kind of regard, this feels like a good matchup for us. I mean, obviously, there's a nervy situation at the other end with our defence up against them. But certainly, I would wager our forward players would be able to get in the game a lot more comfortably than they were against a much more tactically astute, well set up Burnley side on Monday night. It feels like the space will be there for our key players to do their key things.
Yeah, I think there's spaces and opportunities there for the likes of Chong, who found it a bit frustrating, I think, against Burnley, albeit he got the goal, but and certainly Doughty was, triple marked at points. There's opportunities there. The worry is at the other end. I think, John Mousinho was in Kenilworth Road on Monday night watching that game, and he would have seen how Burnley very easily beat Luton's half-hearted press, let's say. We spoke about it in the previous podcast. I don't think they quite nailed it against that team, and the tactics were spot on. But Burnley to Portsmouth, no disrespect to Portsmouth, are a different kettle of fish, and you could even say that Portsmouth coming up after so long out of the Championship, that game sort of mirrored Luton's first game in the Championship, which we've already mentioned. The scoreline certainly mirrored it when Luton drew 3-0 with Middlesbrough, and Middlesbrough had a couple of opportunities, not as many as Leeds had. But and then after that, Luton really did find it tough in that league. Everybody remember that league. It was so difficult to once getting up. Same thing, Luton won the League One title, and getting up into the Championship was sort of an eye-opener as sort of how the gap is.
Yeah, and the kind of novelty, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, of the being up for it because you're back in the Championship for so long. The novelty of that wears off, and the realism hits you that, because they played well against Leeds and still come out of it. Well, they'll be happy with the point, but when you go in front in injury time, that feels like 2 points dropped, even though you're playing Leeds United. As it turns out, Leeds missed an absolute sitter in injury time. Absolute sitter.
Yeah, that would go down as miss of the season, I think.
It really will. If it's not, I want to see the one that is. That's as long as it's not a Luton player that does it, that's for sure. At the top end of the pitch for Portsmouth or our defensively, we should point out that we're kind of being helped here. Their best striker, their top scorer from last season, Colby Bishop's had heart surgery, so we wish him well with whatever that is. We don't know exactly the ins and outs of that, but anytime a heart is operated on, there's something serious there. So we wish him well and hope that he makes a full recovery as quickly as possible. So that helps. Their top scorer last season, I think him and Alfie May in League One last season were going head to head for the Golden Boot. Alfie May was obviously managed by Nathan at the end of the season at Charlton. He's gone to Birmingham, so they were obviously both hot shots at that level. So him not being there, that kind of helps, doesn't it? In much the same way that when we went from League One to the Championship, we lost our two best players, JJ and Stacey, and we couldn't really get the hang of it. If they've lost their best player, there's a hole that needs to be filled going up a level. So whilst I would never think we're going to be comfortable defensively, because we're not set up to be comfortable defensively, we're set up to take risks defensively for the gain that we get at the other end of the pitch, I'm much more comfortable when the opposition haven't got their best player up against us.
Yeah, I'd wager the situation is slightly different, and I'd imagine you know that as well, but the loss of Stacey and Justin was so devastating to the way Luton attacked. And I would imagine that for Portsmouth, he's obviously a goal scorer, finisher, so it's obviously a focal point of their attack, but it's not how the ball got to the dangerous areas. So, and obviously Sorensen's got two at Elland Road, isn't he? So
He got the opener, Lang got 2, didn't he? But
sorry, yes, yep, sorry. And so maybe there's a man waiting in the wings there. It's kind of an unknown quantity. We just don't know at the moment, doesn't he? Because as good as they were in League One, and they were, and all credit to them, do they get found out a bit in the Championship? It happened to Luton, albeit maybe they've got more resources. You would imagine they have, but it is a step up significantly, as we found anyway. So it remains to be seen, but it is good news for Luton's defence at the moment because A, we haven't got a defence, and 2, their top scorer is out of the way.
Indeed, yeah. And I guess part of that kind of step up was highlighted as they made a lot of changes in midweek, but Millwall were pretty comfortable against them in the Cup. And Millwall, with no disrespect to them, have always looked a limited side in this league, not a special side in this league. And look, they might make me eat my words, but nothing that I saw really suggested that that was the case. So maybe they've appreciated. The one good thing in our favour here is, yes, they're going to be bang up for this. This is their first home game in the Championship for a long time. We all remember what it was like for us. It's a lot harder to get an atmosphere going at 12:30 at lunchtime with no floodlights and everything else, no alcohol and everything that comes with a typical day at the football, as we moaned about going into the Burnley game. So the atmosphere will be not subdued, but not that fever pitch that it could have been if, say, it was the Friday night game.
Yeah, you've got to hope so. I've always found it's a good old-fashioned football.
I love the ground.
I really do love it. It gets on top of you. That big stand that they've got is noisy, and if you give them an inch, they'll take the whole nautical mile, won't they? So it in the same way that Burnley did to Luton, which was they played on the front foot and they were very good, but that stifled the life out of the crowd, didn't it? And takes the sting out of that. These first games at home are always emotional in one way or another, and the kick-off time and the way Luton react and try and deal with that crowd can all play into Luton having some inroads there.
Yep. 12:30 kickoff for this one. Sky Sports Plus, if you want to watch it, behind the red button, I believe. For those that have Sky, it's not on the main Sky Sports Plus channel, which is a bit of a pain in the arse. Not at least for those of us that are going and have to get out of our pits an awful lot earlier than what we might necessarily have needed to. Let's swing this round to Luton then, a team in particular. We are recording this way before the Rob Edwards press conference. That's taking place on Friday. Obviously, the game Saturday lunchtime, nowhere near enough turnaround time to include Rob's pre-match conference sort of tidbits. So we're guessing a little bit. The vibes weren't strong that Jordan Clark was too bad, but whether 5 days between game 1 and game 2 is enough for him to recover to start would be questionable. If he's okay, he's straight in. I think that's fair to say. If he's not, but he might be, he may be on the bench to maybe come on with half an hour to go. But we hope that he's okay. And no disrespect to Zach Nelson, but away from home in what could be a bit of an intimidating atmosphere, clicker for Zach would be an obvious move.
Yeah, I think so. If he's fit, he'll play. There's no doubt about it. He's a senior player, and he was one of the better players in the Championship 2 seasons ago. He was fantastic in that season.
If he's not fit, would you play Pelly there for this one?
I mean, yes, I would, because you've got to be able to deal with what the crowd is going to be throwing at you. Regardless of what we just spoken about, they're going to be up for it still. Maybe it's not the fever pitch, and that could be good. But Pelly's a season performer, and what he will do is he'll get around the pitch a lot, and that's going to be needed.
Yeah, exactly that. That's what I was kind of thinking, really. Look, we're not going to change formation yet, are we? If we ever do change formation, it's not going to be until pretty much everyone's back. Certainly Nakamba, I would suggest, and he's not back, or at least there's no signs that he's going to be back for Saturday. But Amari Bell was on the bench on Monday night. We don't know exactly whether he was just there just to fill the bench, or whether but Rob did highlight that in the pre-match that he was probably only a week or so away, 2 weeks away. So we're getting towards the end of that 2-week period. Does he go straight back in, and presumably with Joe Johnson just stepping out again, intimidating atmosphere for an 18-year-old kid?
It is, and Amari's got a hell of a lot of experience, and he just was a Duracell bunny in the last championship season, just played again and again and again. But maybe that's been to his detriment since, because he obviously went away to the Gold Cup as well in between the 2 previous seasons, and just didn't have a break, and obviously broke down. I think there's going to be a question mark about all of them when they come back, and how much you include them and how quickly, because we can scarcely afford for them to break down again and be out for 3 or 4 months again. So, maybe on that basis that maybe he goes with Joe Johnson again. He is more experienced slightly, we're only talking slightly, than Zach. And, apart from getting caught out by the tactical and well drilled long balls that did really kill Luton off at Burnley, I thought his general touch was quite good, and he looked quite confident, and he looks a player that will burst out from the defence with the ball and try and do something with it, which could be a good key to linking the defence and the midfield and unlocking some things.
Yeah, that's the sort of prerequisite of those wide centre backs whilst we're playing them anyway. And Walters went on a rampaging run the other day, didn't he? So he's definitely capable of that. Do you see any other changes? I mean, he's kind of short of options, isn't he, in many ways? But I mean, if you look at the bench on Saturday, we're recording this Wednesday evening. Andros Townsend's still a Luton player right now. Let's assume that that's the case. You got Tom Holmes on the bench. Either of those two pushing for starting spots?
Well, I'd always say Andros because of his experience, but
the question would be who for, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And also, he hasn't really been favoured since the turn of the year, which is a strange one, because when he comes on, he does all the very basics well, but he's also trying to look for even the half spaces to play a through ball or whip a cross in, which he's very good at. And, when only Doughty was the man trying to supply crosses against Burnley, and even then getting thwarted by double and triple players on top of him, if that's going to be the route that Luton need to get into the penalty box, so I can't see that changing since Monday. So that option is going to be needed, I think, and then he'd be a good player to do that.
Yeah, in this formation, it's hard to see how Townsend kind of gets in unless Chong or Morris gets injured, really. But on the flip side of that, it is forecast to be a fairly warm day on Saturday, so keeping the ball is going to be an important thing. We don't want to be chasing the football around all afternoon, and Andros Townsend is very, very good at keeping the football. It sticks to his foot. He's very good at passing it, so that could come in handy. So I'd have no problems if he does come in. The only thing is, unless we can have a dyslexic referee who can't count to 12, don't really see how we can get him in unless there's an injury. And hey, this is Wednesday, game's on Saturday. We can't rule out that we haven't got one or two between now and then.
Or alternatively, if he's to start on the bench, maybe he's just got to come on sooner.
Earlier,
if it's tight or you're chasing, he's got to come way earlier than he did against Burnley.
And go back to the back four a lot earlier. Yeah, that's a shout, to be fair. And also, he's not young, is he? So he probably doesn't want to be chasing around on a balmy hot day all day long. I'm sure
he's been on the chicken feet, mate. He'll be running around for days.
I'm not sure that's helpful, but he swears by it, and that's absolutely fine, and that's good. So we're expecting someone in for Zach, aren't we? No disrespect to Zach, absolutely no slight on him at all. And then the Amari one, we'll know by the time the game kicks off. You'll know if Amari Bell's in line to start the game or not, because Rob will undoubtedly be asked about it, I'm sure, just because of the way we defended the other day. In fact, James will probably do the asking. You got told that you asked a very good question in that press conference, didn't you? I nearly fell off my chair.
Even a blind squirrel finds the occasional nut, mate.
I'm amazed that he wasn't shocked enough to give you a good answer. It was a very good question, actually. I can't remember it now. It was that good, but it was a very. I remember thinking that's a very good question, James. And in a press conference where there weren't too many, it stood out. So yeah, well done on
Get
that.
it in early.
If you can get another
Downhill
one
from here.
if you can get another one in on Friday, then so be it. Preferably one that doesn't involve transfers, please. Yeah, so that's how we think Luton will line up. That's how we kind of think Luton can get at Portsmouth, and that's also, the kind of strengths and weaknesses of the Portsmouth side. It's going to be an entertaining game, isn't it?
I can't see it being 0-0, that's for sure. The spaces that Portsmouth left and the spaces that Luton left in their opening games suggest to me that there's going to be plenty of attacking intent from both, and maybe it's going to be a straight shootout as to who comes out on top. It is going to be exciting, and that might not be necessarily what Luton fans need at the moment. A bit of calm and a bit of assuredness at the back might be the one.
I mean, I was going to ask that before we come on to our score predictions. Do you think Monday night will have had any impact on the way we play in this game? Do you think that it was such a shock to the system that we might be a little bit more cautious, or will Rob just really double down on this is what we do, we need to be true to ourselves, stick to what we do, and if we take the occasional beating along the way, as long as we beat more teams than beat us, then so be it. I mean, I did mention in the preview podcast, you don't get promoted having to win 46 games of football. I think we saw Portsmouth won 25 games last season. That's roughly the ballpark that you're heading into. You don't have to win every game. So is it, we are what we are, and we'll do what we do and stick to the belief in our system? Or could there be a cautiousness that, oh Christ, we've just been absolutely battered, we don't want to do that again?
Well, it's so difficult because you might anticipate that, but we talked about in the previous preview podcast whether attack is the best option, and it probably is against most sides. I think as much as we can pick out and criticise the goals, 3 of them at least. Well, actually all 4, but 3 of the ones from open play against Burnley. You do have to give Burnley immense amount of credit from recognising that the way to beat Luton's press, albeit that it wasn't a great one that night, was to go longer than they ever did last season. That wasn't what Burnley did. They knocked it around, tiki-taka around the back, and got found out quite easily in the Premier League. So Scott Parker's ability to have a plan B was commendable, and you have to hold your hands up and say that he did it really well. So there's that to contend with, that Burnley were exceptional in executing those goals, particularly the ones from open play. Portsmouth will think that they could do that as well. They created enough opportunities against Leeds, and they were obviously won the league. They scored 78 goals in last season, so they'll be still riding high on that success, and quite rightly so. So it's a very difficult one for Luton to try and manage. I just like a bit more application in the first place, and then see where that takes you. And if that means keeping it a bit tight early on, let's not forget the first goal was 6 minutes against Burnley as a killer against them. So let's get to double figures at least, shall we?
I mean, it felt longer than 6 minutes. It was, that first half really dragged on Monday night. I don't know why. Maybe it's because the Premier League games whizzed past. That first half on Monday really. If I offered you a point now, would you take it?
Yes, I would. I really think it's a difficult game going down there. The game, the magnitude of it for them, the atmosphere that they'll create regardless of the time and stuff. I do take your point that it probably won't be as raucous, but if it's not Spinal Tap 11 Fratton Park, a 9 out of 10 is still going to be pretty harum scarum. So I think it's going to be a really difficult game. So if you're going to give me a point after Monday, yeah, I'll have it.
Yeah, I've been to Fratton Park certainly twice, might even been a third time, and I've never known it not be intimidating. So it's going to be that. It's just the way that the gaff's built, isn't it? But, it's not going to be as intimidating, you wouldn't think, as some of the places we've been to in the last couple of seasons. You'd kind of hope, and you'd kind of hope the experiences that we've got in that time will allow us to sort of just play the way that we play. The one thing we can say, not with absolute guarantee, but with no disrespect to Portsmouth, we're not expecting Burnley to turn up.
No.
If they can match them levels, then you're looking at an Ipswich from last season that went from League One straight the way through to the Premier League. And I don't get those vibes about Portsmouth. Certainly nothing that I saw in the 2 games would suggest they're that. So we should be facing a slightly lower par opposition performance. It's just whether we can then rise above that level of performance and impose ourselves on it.
Yeah, no question about it. Luton have got to improve in every single facet that they did on Monday night. Like I said in the last podcast, the one thing that really frustrated me as a consistency throughout the game was they were second best to everything. They're in the technical stakes, and we know how technical Burnley are. They were nowhere near way off it. Too many balls, misplaced passes, balls bouncing off shins. It felt very much like they were still top flight side, and Luton hadn't had a pre-season in that respect. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but it was one of those constant frustrations that attacks broke down through not necessarily Burnley forcing them, although they did at times, but at other times it was just the basics that let Luton down. So that's got to improve for a start.
Yep, would agree with that. Absolute all-round improvement is needed. I'm sure it will come. There's no way the performance that we put in against Burnley is a true reflection of the squad as it is now, and certainly how it will be once everyone's fit and firing and players come in and everything else.
So one thing that we didn't highlight in the Burnley podcast, which I did think he had a good game, it's just because the result took the focus. I was quite impressed with Shandon Baptiste. I thought he had a really good, decent appearance in the middle there. At times he looked frustrated because there was no one to pass to, or he was getting outnumbered. But he did.
You'll get used to that.
He did try to keep hold of the ball, and obviously he played his part in the goal by whipping the ball into Alfie Doughty. So that's two games in a row he's done that now. So there's obviously something they've worked on there.
In American sports, he'd have got a pre-assist for that.
They were talking about that on Sky.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, they were talking about maybe he got a pre-assist, and I'm like, come on, let's stop going down this Yankee route.
Fair enough. Yes, he did. He looked a very accomplished footballer. You're absolutely right. He certainly needs some help alongside him, though, and that will be the priority in the transfer window. Whether that happens between now and Saturday, who knows? Let's hope it does. If it doesn't, let's not throw all of our toys out of the pram. That's pretty much it for this preview episode of the podcast, but we won't go without score predictions. And Jimbo, as you're still the defending champion and we're 0-0, I'll let you go first for this one. Portsmouth versus Luton. How does it finish?
3-0 again.
3-3.
3-3.
2 3-3s to start for them. They're getting value for money, aren't they? That's for sure. Yeah, I'm along similar lines. If I pick a Luton 0-0 this season, someone get me a doctor, because I don't think many are coming along, that's for sure. One less, though. Last time Luton played Portsmouth, it was a 3-2 win for Luton, and that will be the scoreline on Saturday, 3-2 Luton. And we'll all be very, very happy as we make our way back to Luton in the middle of the afternoon when the game should be being played. We won't bring kickoff times into it too much this season.
I would say I was quite determined in the aftermath of the Burnley game. I knew this question was going to come up. I was going to go for a defeat. I can't quite bring myself to it on this, but it's there. It's a serious possibility against it. I wouldn't go down to Fratton Park thinking this is going to be a walkover, and we come back to the word of the season. Don't know expectation. Don't expect that.
Yeah, absolutely. This game merits respect. They're a good opposition. You don't win any league at any time if you're not a well set up, classy football side. And you look at that League One, and you look at the teams that are still in League One who were in it last season. Bolton gave us time of our lives in the Cup last season. Peterborough are usually a good side at that level as well. And a couple of other, Barnsley, we haven't nicked every single one of their players yet. They're in there as well. And
none this summer.
No. Maybe that's what the problem is. Maybe Barnsley have shut the shop up and we've got no one to sign.
Somebody get up to Oakwell and nick their best player.
it was a good division that they won. So yeah, they absolutely merit respect. But there were two divisions between these two sides last season, and hopefully Luton will prove exactly why that was the case over the course of what will be a tricky 90 minutes. But if we can get in front, that would be half the battle, wouldn't it? We don't get in front of many games of football these days.
Don't concede an early goal, for goodness sake.
Yeah, then it
just
does
a
get a
mountain
bit
to climb, and that will get them, maybe from a 9 to from a 10 out of 10 at noise level, and difficult then, isn't it?
Yeah, the less play up Pompeys we can hear, the better, because that doesn't half start to grate on your noggin after a while as well, doesn't it? But great set of fans, and I'm sure it'll be a great atmosphere. Sold out in the Luton end as well, so if you haven't got a ticket for this one, you will have to stick to Sky Sports Plus or whatever channel it is that they call it. That's it for this episode of the podcast. You've not got as long to get your score predictions in for this one as normal. Don't blame us, blame Sky TV. But give us your score predictions, and if you do get it right, we will give you a shout out in the review podcast, which will come along usual time next week. Hopefully we're all back to normal, and we can get the review out at a normal time for you. Indeed, if you're going to the game, be loud, be proud, get right behind the boys. Leave any concerns that you have maybe until after the game and get right behind the boys for the 90 minutes. And I'm sure between us all, we can get some sort of result. Thanks very much for watching or listening, however it is that you've consumed this podcast. Please do keep liking, rating us, subscribing, everything that you can to support the podcast. The more followers and shares and everything that we get, the bigger and better we can make this podcast. And we do have big plans for the podcast this season once we've got this opening portion of the season out of the way. More plans that we'll expand on as we get into the season, really. Thanks very much to the Barber Club and the Lower Level in Luton who stage our studio now. We really appreciate your support, guys. Thanks very much for that. Thanks to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our brand new intro that you'll have heard at the start of this podcast and you're about to hear at the end of it. And to Ed Smith Creative for the designs that you see on set. Until next time, which will be a review of what we hope will be Luton's first points of the new season. From James and myself, come on you Hatters, we can do this.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care